uh, yeah, to make this great event a reality. And also, thank you to all of you in this room. It's difficult to focus right after lunch, and so please try to stay awake. I have put together some slides, there's 7 altogether, and then I will use them just to illustrate where I'm coming from. The previous distinguished speaker raised the issue of, sanctity of life, the spiritual norms that we have all been exposed to or taught by different great religions, or even, the modern secular liberalisms. And yet, we end up still living in the world full of wars, genocides, religious bigotry, racism, violence, assassinations, and all the rest. So I take a different perspective because I was raised in Burma, and I'm not religious, but I consider my outlook Buddhist influenced. That is that we are here, transitional, and our life is short and impermanent and transient. However, we want to explain our presence here. It's not the subject of concern for me today. So we have a saying that a visit to a grave for a funeral is worth 10 visits to a Buddhist temple or religious ceremony, because witnessing the finality of a human existence is considered having spiritual value that would make you realize that life is fragile, and those who have perished, they're gone forever. And so I take that view when I approach the issue of Rohingya genocide, or genocides in general, or like any type of mass atrocities. So for a number of years I was conducting what I call mass grave tours in killing fields in Cambodia. There are over 100, but the main one made immortalized by the Hollywood film Killing Fields. It's located in Phnom Penh, just outside of Phnom Penh. In one old Chinese mass grave, over 20,000 enemies of the revolutions, men, children, women, and a few foreign journalists were exterminated by the Pol Pot Khmer Rouge regime. So I would take the Buddhist monks, nuns, and others from my country, people who have influence over public opinion, to Cambodia, and then we walk around and like we would have a guide, and also we would attend sometime live sessions in the proceedings of the Khmer Rouge tribunal that was running. And then we would talk with different legal teams of prosecution, civil parties, as well as defense. And we educated, they educated us about the international law, its application, notions of genocide convention, interpretations, judicial proceedings within the UN system. Then I also visited Auschwitz 4 times as a speaker, and also I made a film with the Uzbek British journalist about Auschwitz. We called it Lessons Never Learned, Auschwitz Lessons Never Learned. And I've visited about 10 different death camps in Poland and Germany, and I've paid my respect in different mass graves in Bosnia-Herzegovina. What you're seeing on the left, it's a medical a building in Auschwitz, the main camp. There were like several different major camps. This is, some of you may have noticed the iconic building right in the center, not that little thingy, but the SS administrative quarter, where the trains come in and SS doctors do the separation. They decide, like, who's going to be guessed in the next hour and who will be exploited as slaves by the SS for economic value. And then the children's drawing by some inmates in one of the barracks there of children who arrived after Warsaw Ghetto uprisings, and some of the, and then the next one, please. And then that's the one of the mass graves where like 450, victims were buried, or the remains. That's in Cambodia. And then the next one, please. And that's Srebrenica, 3 generations of men and boys, grandfather to grandsons, over 8,000 were slaughtered, and me, raised in a Buddhist culture, paying my respect in my own way at one of the memorial stones. So what I remember going through these mass graves is the pain I feel when I hear stories, whether told by the guides who are specialists in their own subject matters, or I read the captions. Yeah? And I remember like going through some of the barracks, especially in Auschwitz, on one of my visits. There was a woman's barracks where the women who were too ill to produce any type of labor for the SS, they were left to die. Like they were given like a 2 or 3 teaspoonful of water. Yeah? They were just left to die with no blanket, nothing, no heat. Yeah? And these like bunk beds, there were layers of dust you could see. And all of a sudden I have an urge to touch the bed, the dust, the layers of dust, thinking that maybe I rub the dust, maybe that will soothe their souls wherever they may be. I'm not particularly a religious person, and afterlife is not really a concern, but even me at that moment felt that I wanted to touch them, yeah, in that barracks. So I think the most important thing for us to understand is genocide. We know that slavery and transatlantic slave trade and outright colonization, with the exception of Israel in Gaza, and not just Gaza, the whole of Palestine, is unthinkable today. Yeah? For 400 years, slavery and slave trade were legal, moral, Christian. Yeah? If you go to London in the 1800, every clergy, every churchman will tell you that Christianity and slave trade and slavery were compatible. Yeah? And but now the word slavery, even the N word, like in quotes nigger, cannot be pronounced without being fired. In other words, these heinous crimes have been made by our ancestors as unthinkable, unimaginable. Yeah? We can no longer imagine a scenario where slave trade happens tomorrow. No. We can no longer imagine an African person to be in chains, shackled, tattooed with like a hot iron, right? Today, no. Slavery as an institution is no longer acceptable as legal or moral. So the goal has to be, we need to make crimes that can be called genocide as unimaginable and unthinkable as slave trade and slavery. If we can make those heinous crimes from 400, 500 years ago unimaginable today, and it's not any other supreme being who made those unimaginable. The struggles of people, including the enslaved Africans themselves, they fought and they made those things unimaginable. So that should be number one goal. And then secondly, I think when we say genocide in Gaza or genocide in Myanmar, my own country, Rohingya, what do we mean? I think and then who decide what is genocide, right? Lawyers, judges, politicians who run powerful states such as the United States. Remember, like the Secretary of State in the Donald Trump's administration, with a single tweet, decided that China was committing genocide against Uyghur people in Xinjiang. Yeah? Single tweet, a politician. Yeah? And then Hillary Clinton and others would say, oh, Gaddafi is committing genocide, or Saddam is committing genocide, right? Or like now like Putin is committing genocide, and then Putin's arguing that no, Ukraine is committing genocide against the Russians in Luhansk and other places. So we need to ask, are politicians to be trusted with throwing around this word genocide against anyone that they deem their enemy? So genocide scholars, lawyers, there have been so much debates within the genocide scholarly community. Professional societies got split, and academics, they don't talk to each other anymore, particularly around the Gaza issue. And families get split. So who get to decide genocide? Well, before we can answer that question, we need to know what genocide is, and we need to educate. Those of us who have the privilege of studying genocides, we have a moral and intellectual obligation to inform the general public what constitutes genocide. It's not a rocket science. It's not nuclear physics or quantum physics. You don't need a PhD. You don't even have to attend a university, good or bad. We can teach even young children what genocide is. Genocide is simply this: beyond the legal definition that is provided by the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide that was adopted on the 9th of December 1948. On the 10th of December 1948, Universal Declaration was adopted. Right? The day before that, the Genocide Convention was adopted. Genocide, in its original formulation, simply means the intentional destruction of human groups on the basis of their identity. And the Genocide Convention, as we have it today, which is relied upon by International Court of Justice, human rights organizations, lawyers, and scholars, the legal definition is an extremely watered-down definition. They talk about acts. These acts constitute genocide, right? If you can prove that these acts are conducted with the intent to destroy a population in whole or in part, that to me is an intellectually impoverished definition. The original inventor of the word genocide, Raphael Lemkin, Polish Jewish lawyer who studied at today's university called Lviv, currently in Ukraine, before it was Laval. He was a young lawyer during the interwar years, the 1920s. He was obsessed with the idea, and he was concerned about the destruction of populations yeah? Human populations. If life is sacred, if life is inherently valuable, unassailable, as the declaration today the stated, genocide is the total opposite of life. And so I think 30 seconds, and I will end. 5 minutes? Oh, thank you. So the identity, the destruction of identity is a part of genocide. Erasure of history is a part of, people talk about educide, educational institutions were bombed. There are no more universities, not just clinics, in Gaza, right? There are two parts. One is physical destruction, destruction of spiritual foundation. For Raphael Lemkin, genocide is a wholesome, holistic terminology. It captures everything, because killing poets, writers, community leaders, it's all part of a genocide. You don't have to build gas chambers and 20 death camps for a crime to be considered genocide. Yeah? In Srebrenica, only 8,000. It's not like 1.2 million. That was the number of Nazi victims killed or mass slaughtered in Auschwitz camp alone. And so the other part is the survivors. The perpetrators who emerge victorious, they reorganize the surviving community of their victims in the way they want. That is why I get really infuriated when either Israeli government or the Americans or the European Union officials say, oh, no, Gaza cannot be left in the hands of Hamas. Well, the fate of Gaza, the future of Gaza, is entirely up to the people who live there. It is their right to self-determine what type of government they want, what type of society they want to organize. So this idea of like a post-Gaza conflict, we cannot accept this body or that body, and we will do this, that is still a part of a genocidal discourse. And the law is so woefully inadequate that 50% of the process of genocide falls outside the purview of the original conception of genocide. And finally, what are we to do? I won't go into the atrocities in Gaza. We are all saturated. I can no longer watch television. It's so painful. And so, I cannot function. I get every day, every one of us, I'm sure who watch television or watch on social media, the little children's hands coming out of rubble, covered with ashes. That's traumatizing, especially, whether you're a dad or granddad or mom or grandma or just a single person, seeing fellow human beings. I'll tell you, I was, 3 months ago, I was in Upper Austria at a Nazi concentration camp run by Austrian Nazi Party in collaboration with the German Nazis. It's called Mauthausen. In almost 10 years, the number of children that were killed there is 23,000. 23,000 children. Yeah, Nazi victims from 1938-39 when the camp was built until May 1945 when the camp was closed by the victorious Allied forces. In those 7 or 8 years, the Nazi killed 23,000. You step out of the Mauthausen train station, the first thing that greeted you on the wall was the memorial to the children. 7 years, 23,000. Compare that rate to the rate of Israeli killing in Gaza. In 7 months, they killed close to 20,000, 18,000 children, infants included. Yeah? In 7